Yeah, hello everyone. We will start in 1 minute approximately. Okay. Yeah, hello everyone and welcome to our webinar today. We're excited to have you all here in this insightful session, especially as we explore the practical application and impact of OKRs in a complex global setting like Roche has. Today, we are honored to have Christian Cater with us, a seasoned expert in OKR implementation and strategic transformation with multinational organizations such as Roche. Christian will be sharing his experience, challenges, and strategies for driving organizational alignment and agility through OKRs. We couldn't ask for a better guide on this topic, so please join me in welcoming Christian. Christian, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dirk. And so I think it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. So this is a global webcast, so I have a feeling we're talking to people from all across the world. I appreciate you taking the time to dial in and hear my story on this, how to implement OKRs in a big multinational company. And let me just go ahead. I'll start by sharing my screen. We put it in presentation mode. And I just want to sort of give you a caveat before we get started. I did, as I thought about how I was going to present this, I didn't really feel that this was a training. I really wanted to keep it sort of on a discussion type of level, sort of a storytelling type of level. And so that's sort of where I'm at with this. So I do have some slides that I'll go through. So as a storyteller, I like to have some graphics to help me explain the ideas that I'm talking about. I find that that's an easier way to get the theory and the knowledge across to the audience and the participants. But I really want this to be sort of let you have a feeling of sort of how this story unfolds, of how you can deploy something like OKRs, this goal setting system, in an organization that's global, on a global scale, with maybe over 50,000 people. So with that, let's take a look at sort of the presentation. It's just a quick introduction, gives you a little bit of background on who I am. I've been a part of transformations in a number of companies over the last 25 years. My first role was working for a Japanese automotive company. I was in their OE department as a process improvement engineer. This is sort of where I've gained a lot of my lean experience. So I've led some lean transformations. I've been in sort of Lean Six Sigma environments. And then just recently, I was in a large agile transformation that was going on in Roche. And I'll share the story I'm going to share with you is about one of the divisions within Roche that used an OKR approach to setting their goals. I also published a book recently called Breakthrough Agile, the 5 Key Business Processes for Cultural Transformation. It's available, on most online marketplaces. So you go to Amazon, you'll be able to pick it up. On Google, you'll be able to pick it up. And it covers, it reflects a little bit of the story that I'm going to tell you today. It reflects a little bit of this implementation plan that I'll talk about. But it also dives a little bit deeper into giving you some, actual hands-on tools and ways that you can help your organization succeed in using OKRs to create more value. So I'm happy to be here. I'm quite honored, and I want to thank Dirk and the OKR Institute for giving me an opportunity to share this experience I had with you today. Just to give you an idea of what we'll be talking about today, first we're going to start by setting the context, so we sort of all have this level setting as to what we mean by large scale organization. When I talk about OKR framework, what I'm actually talking about. And then I'll get into the what and how, which reflects the story about Roche's use of an OKR approach to commercial operations. And then at the end, I'll talk about, what I call the traps. There are some things that can cause a deployment to go sideways or even bring it to a halt. And I think it's important that everybody is aware of these if you're in one of these situations where you're a key change agent for large scale implementation. And you may want to ask yourself, why do we talk about, what is about large scale implementation that brings us together today? And if you think about, a large ship traveling across the ocean, to get it to change directions, it's a massive amount of energy. It takes a lot of time. It seems to be a slow, change in direction. And when you're dealing with a large scale organization, when you're dealing with big multinational organization, that's the feeling that you get, because not everybody is on the same page and not everybody is pulling in the same direction. And this approach that I'm going to talk to you about helps make this change a lot quicker. It helps make this, large vessel turn in a direction that will help you deliver better results sooner, just by following these simple steps that we'll be talking about today. I think also what's important about this large scale implementation is that I'm assuming most of the people on this call are coaches or people that do some facilitation, train other people on OKRs, and I do the same thing. And 50%, 60% of my time is usually spent working with one team, where you're dealing with a manager or leader, and they want to bring OKRs to a team, maybe of 15, 20 people. And, there's a tactic that you use in order to get that team up to speed and understanding what OKRs are, how to deploy them, how to track and monitor them, how to do self-corrections. And, that plan works for, a small team. So when we talk about thousands of people and hundreds of teams, what's the right recipe that can bring sort of this OKR framework into the organization, and help an organization of that size make this kind of jump in improvement towards delivering more value for the company. So again, just to sort of repeat some of the things I was talking about. So when we talk about large scale, I'm thinking of a company that's usually over 50,000 employees. And of course, this is not a fixed line of 50,000. If you're under that, you're not large scale. But it's an organization that really has this kind of organizational structure, where there's a CEO, and then you have these divisional CEOs that report into him, and chief financial officer, chief information officer, the chief people officer. So the C room is quite robust and big, and there could be a few other roles on this. Usually these divisional CEOs are split up by product type. So with Roche, we had a pharma division, we had a medical device division, diagnostics division. And then within those divisions, within the scope of work, or the budget that these CEOs had, really covered up to 20, 30,000 people. And then you can see sort of the CFO and the chief people officer, they may have a lot of people reporting to them, but in most of these multinational organizations, it's a matrix organization. And what we mean by that is these people that are in the finance, reporting up through to the chief financial officer, also have dotted line reporting into these commercial organizations or these operations type of organizations. that, in operations, we're talking about the quality groups and manufacturing groups, research and development. Commercial organizations are basically your sales organization. So within these organizations, you also have, financial officers, you have, HR personnel, you have information technology engineers. So it's this matrix organization that's going on. So this is what we mean by sort of a large scale organization, is that it has this kind of organizational structure, a lot of moving parts, a lot of people. And, our task right now as these change agents, trying to implement OKRs in an organization of this, with this much complexity and of this size. And I think one of the key elements to being successful here is to make sure that, the key decision makers and the people that are going to be your sponsors, the people that are going to be influencing other people in the C room, and also the senior leaders in the organization, see OKRs as more than just a tool, more than just, hey, here's how we're going to write, goals for the year, but see it as a framework, and understand that, by deploying this OKR framework, you're going to be impacting the roles and responsibilities of people within the organization. Leaders and team members are going to have now new responsibilities as to how they do their day-to-day work, as how they execute on strategy activities. It's going to impact the organizational structure. And we'll talk about organizational structure and how the OKR framework actually brings a new element to the organizational structure. It impacts your business processes. Strategic planning, of course, is one that gets impacted by OKRs, but also things like performance management. It's no longer sort of, people have individual objectives that they put into sort of a personnel file that says, this is what I'm going to do for the year. And, based upon how well you achieve those objectives as an individual, you get a certain amount of merit increase or a certain amount of bonus. Then finally, the customer centricity. With OKRs, you're definitely thinking, what is the value that I can bring to the organization? How can I help farm? How can I help harvest more value out of our customers with the services and products that we have to deliver to that particular region or that particular customer? So it's really a holistic transformation. And as you start this sort of deployment, you want to make sure that, these influencers, these people that are high up in the organization, that have a lot of influence over what happens throughout the entire organization, understand that this is what they're signing up for. This is the change that they're expecting. Right. So just to give you an idea of the impact, how OKRs can make a difference to an organization. I want to go through the sort of beginning story about Roche, and this is particularly in their pharmaceutical commercial area. So if you think of that organizational chart I showed you, one of the divisions in Roche is pharmaceuticals, and then as you go down, there's a commercial area that does sales and marketing, market access, talks to doctors, goes into hospitals, and sort of negotiates the prices, drugs, and delivers drugs to those service units that provide them to patients. So in late 2020, there was a burning platform for all of pharma, especially for biopharmaceutical companies. And that was a change in the laws where they now were allowing biosimilars to come into the market. And this was a barrier for a lot of generic companies for many years, because they couldn't identically match the biopharmaceutical that the branded companies were making. And of course, through a Supreme Court action in the United States, a generic company actually said, hey, if it's similar enough, because it is a biologic, then it should be considered a generic. And it got approval in the Supreme Court for the use of biosimilars. And that created this burning platform at Roche that said, hey, these billion-dollar products that we have are now going to be undermined. We're now going to have competition from biosimilars, and that's exactly what happened. So they had to start thinking, how can we change our approach to marketing our products, to delivering our products to the customer? So in 2020, they embarked on a transformational strategy. They embarked on this transformational journey to change their commercial operations to one that was more customer centric, also more team based, and also more outcome focused. Um, and as part of this, they adopted this OKR approach to setting goals. And they started this in 2020. I started coaching some of the pharmaceutical affiliates just around that time, 2021, 2022. And as we would get into their discussions during the goal setting period, they would set their annual OKR. You would see them writing objectives that reflected new products that they had coming onto the market. And their measurements would be, how can we increase the access of patients to these products? How can we, increase our sales for these particular products in these particular regions? And they stuck with it. And what you see on the right is a bar chart that's showing the change in percent. So this is the 34% represents a 34% of new products as a total percent of pharma sales for Roche year ending September 2021. And this last one at the corner is year ending September 2024. So you can see the step change in the percent of new product sales and as part of total pharma sales over these last 4 years, as these commercial operations are using this OKR approach to drive higher results, get higher value out of the products that they're serving, that they're delivering to their customers. So it was quite successful, and they're continuing on with using this OKR approach to their commercial operations. But along this journey, what they found out was that it's not just standalone. You can't sort of create this OKR way of working and have it sort of independent from how they do business normally. So once they adopted this OKR approach, it also changed how leaders had to act and behave towards the teams that were working towards achieving the OKR key results. It impacted, the sense of accountability. Now teams became more accountable, and individuals became more accountable for their actions. How they track performance on the OKRs changed. Normally it was 3-month sort of financial review, and action was taken. Now they're looking at monthly to 3-month reviews of how are we doing towards this key result, and then self-correcting what they're doing if things are going well or not going well. Decision making became something else that was quite important to these organizations. Instead of having a single decision maker that was a highest paid person in the room or the most senior person in the room, now decision making was pushed down to that team level, to the individual that was closest to the actual customer or doctor that they were engaged in. So the idea of empowerment became very important to the success of this OKR approach. And the word empathy started to be used a lot more, and the idea of the customer journey. So, requiring sales and marketing people to empathize with, the organization they're dealing with, whether it was a hospital or whether it was a clinic or, a general practitioner was on his own. This sort of empathy of what the customer was going through became quite insightful for how these commercial affiliates started to craft their annual objectives in their OKRs. So again, it was quite a big change for the organization. I heard a lot of pushback sometimes from people saying, hey, this is not going to work, or, we're going to lose people because now our performance management system isn't based just solely on whether you get outstanding sales. It's more of a, did the team succeed? So there was is quite a lot of uncertainty that was going on during this time as well. And I also want to point out, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, is that um, during this time, even the senior leaders, so the general managers of these commercial affiliates, you know, were, you could just sense sort of an uncertainness about them. But because they were committed to this program, they would tell their teams, hey, we have to move forward with this. We really have to use this OKR approach in our business planning and how we set our goals. And we need to stick to this process so that we can, learn from it and get better at it. And in the end, we'll again experience the results that you see in this bar chart on the right. So it's quite a successful implementation with the pharma commercial area and Roche. So with that, I'm going to share with you some of the things that happened and how they made this happen, sort of from the high level viewpoint, to give you an idea what kind of changes occurred. So at the beginning, when they first started this transformation effort, there was this need to have sort of an office, a structural unit within the organization that had responsibility for the transformation efforts. And they called it there was a transformation office within the pharma organization that, had a chief transformation officer. It had senior coaches. It also had these team of senior leaders that were there to help bring the message to the rest of the organization. And, in my thinking, you can have this, and I call it an OKR office just for this presentation, but you could have this office sort of at the level of where the CEO is at. Now, if you had this, the highlight or the visibility of your OKR program sort of, with the C room, then that's going to give it a lot of sort of influence, a lot of sort of persuasive power to drive OKRs throughout the organization. Within Roche, they sort of had it down inside the division. So they made it sort of clear that, hey, you can have this at your divisional level. The CEO and his team were sort of a little bit above it at that time, but this worked for the pharma organization where the CTO for pharma reported into the president of the pharma division, and that was enough to keep the commercial organization moving forward. So, having said this one point that you want to understand with this type of change to organizational structure is that Roche, provided resources to make sure that they could have a successful deployment of this transformational strategy that they were rolling out. And the step that they took was to create this transformational or this OKR office at the beginning. So with that, you want to, let me see, I got to move my cursor around. So if you dig into this OKR or transformation office, the responsibilities that they have really can make or break the deployment because there's some key things that they need to hold as sort of their responsibility. This is their scope of work. This is what's going to make them successful. And they need to maintain this throughout this deployment effort. One is the quality of the OKR framework. And what I mean by that is this OKR office or transformation office, determines the standards for the transformational effort, this OKR framework. So they, they define, put down the definitions as to here's what a good objective looks like. Here's what a good key result looks like. Here's how we want to do the tracking process, weekly, monthly, 90 days. in your OKR framework, you need to have coaches, you need to have an OKR framework owner. The senior leader needs to be the sponsor or needs to champion this within, each organization. So this all needs to be sort of clear, needs to be concise, needs to be consistent across the entire organization. And then this team as well, in this transformation office, is responsible for maintaining focus on upholding these standards. It needs to be sort of the guardian that says, hey, this is what we see as the best practice. This is what we're going to use going forward. And, we need to make sure that everybody follows this standard. And of course, if something better comes along, or if they learn from their journey and they want to make some changes, then hey, that's part of the learning process as well. They sort of update their standards to reflect, the best thinking that's going on at that time. But one key thing for this transformation office is that they're responsible for the quality of what the OKR framework has for the organization. Another key important point for this transformation office is to coach and train others to the standards. So in these early stages of the transformation, the early stages of the deployment, this team is coaching these senior leaders on what OKRs are and are not. These are the guys that are talking to the CEO and the CIO and CFO and the divisional CEOs and helping them bridge their knowledge gap on what OKRs truly are and how you deploy these and what this framework and this system looks like for their organization or for the organizations that they have within their area of work. So I think this is a key point because a lot of times what you'll see is senior leaders have this knowledge gap. They may think intuitively, they know, hey, I know what OKRs are, they're moonshots. But then when you start peeling back sort of the layers of their knowledge, you see that they don't quite understand it. I had one conversation with a managing director in Roche, and we were talking about OKRs. And, I just said to him sort of, just casually that, while the objective is a qualitative statement, the key results are quantitative. And that was news to him. He just really didn't understand, oh, that's how an OKR, that's the anatomy of an OKR. He just thought OKRs were moonshot goals, that, try to do something impossible. And he never really had that sort of basic training around what OKRs truly are, how they're constructed and how they play a part in sort of this strategy planning session process that goes on in most organizations. So coaching is a big part of this team's work at the beginning of the deployment phase. Also developing a coaching community. So within the organization, as the deployment gets started, this team needs to find other coaches throughout the organization. So if you're in this commercial organization, you'll go down into the regional levels, into the countries, and find coaches at that country level that can support, that particular geography with this transformation deployment, with this OKR deployment. And then this team, this, transformation office that's located at the very high level of the organization is coaching this coach on, developing the skills to do, good implementation, coaching this coach on, how do you, influence and persuade people to change their ways of working and adopt sort of an OKR framework, giving them the knowledge that it takes in order to be successful at their job. And then I think the last part of this sort of coach and training bubble is about, making sure that, senior leaders, and we're talking, people that are, leaders of leaders, so to speak, have as part of their development process this OKR understanding, that they understand this holistic approach to how we're going to define the work that we need to do in order to help us become more competitive in the future. And I think this is quite important. I remember at Roche, I was on a call, and it was a general manager of an affiliate, and then there was a regional managing director. And as I'm listening to these two talk, they're actually using the language of OKRs to describe how they need to move forward on certain projects. They talk about, hey, we need to be clear on what the objective is here. And we need to be clear on, how we're going to measure success. We need to make sure that we have a team that's, there to support this, and to make sure that, we see this through to the end. And just hearing that, just gives you an idea that, hey, these senior leaders are taking it seriously, and they're practicing it. They may not be the textbook experts in OKR, but they're learning, and they understand that this is a system that's going to help us deliver more value to the organization. And we just need to press on, and keep deploying it, keep practicing on it until we get better and better at it. And then finally, I think the last bubble in this transformation office is a deployment support. And whoever's in this office, a chief transformation officer, the coaches, these senior leaders I was talking about, they have to be able to walk the talk. And what I mean by that is, if they're telling people, hey, we need to do, have OKRs for, 3 to 5 years, and we need to have OKRs for 1 year, then these guys need to be able to stand up and walk a team through that. They need to be able to, help a team get better at writing OKRs. You need to be able to coach people on how to be better coaches for teams that are trying to achieve an OKR objective, or meet the key requirements of an objective, so that they can um, see the results. So if you have a team that's more aligned towards just being good facilitators, and being more um, about, hey, well, going to bring this knowledge to you, but it's up to you how you want to do this, then I think it's sort of a weak link in this chain of having a successful deployment. And I think the other thing is just passion, that this team really has to have a lot of passion about um, using this system to make the organizational better, to just have this cultural change that will improve the working lives of people within the organization, but also deliver better results for the organization by following through on this type of framework. And this passion also means that there's a resilience to, I said, resilience to antibodies. And what I mean by that is that there are always going to be pushback. There's always going to be people saying, hey, this is what we've been doing all along, or I'm already doing this, or we have financial planning that we do that covers this. This team needs to be able to push through those, those resistors, those antibodies to using OKRs, and get them to adopt it, or get them to see the value in this system, in delivering change to the organization, but making it, actually making it a better place and a more competitive company to work at. So that's sort of the transformation office. I think these are key elements to the transformation office that you just need to be aware of if you're, at the point where you're working with this large scale organization, that this needs to be defined, um, you know, as you get this office up and running. So having said this, we didn't really talk about, hey, how do you get started? What's the first thing to do? And I think ideally you'd want to start sort of at that C room. You sort of want to pilot, you know, a team, an objective that maybe the C room has, and get them to use OKRs to achieve, some objective that they set for themselves. Um, and hopefully it's a, strategic importance, hopefully has high impact to the organization, but get that C room to start using this system so that they can, influence others, that they can tell their story to other people in the organization, and get them to, buy into it, and get them to start experimenting with OKRs. Once you sort of get through this, initial, pilot, then you want to move into sort of key business areas that have high impact. One thing that I've seen throughout my career with these transformation initiatives is that people will move it away from significant business processes, and they'll work on things that are more in the support area, which have, that they're important, but they have less impact on helping the organization become more competitive. And what this does is it doesn't allow the system to drive the change that you want it to do, because people see it as sort of a nice to have type of business planning process. They still continue with their financial planning and budgeting, and they're coming up with a business plan, and we'll do some, let these teams do some OKRs if they want to. So my advice is always look for, hey, where are we struggling? Where are we really hurting? What's critical for our success? And then, hey, let's jump in here with OKRs, um, and have these teams use this, this process to help define their work and just define, what is it's going to make them successful. So once you're in this point, you've got your office set up, and you're, have these, standards developed, teams put together, you're starting the pilots. What you really want to understand is that you're changing the culture of the organization. So this OKR system is replacing the existing goal setting methodology that the company has. And when you do it right, what you're going to do is you're going to move people from sort of a command and control strategic planning um, point of view or mindset to this, strategic alignment, where there's explicit and implicit alignment, where there's cross department alignment on objectives and key results. Much more holistic than just having a KPI that you're trying to achieve when they're in this command and control sort of strategic planning. Go from, risk averse to this MVP mindset. Hey, I've heard so many people say, oh, we don't want to do that because this will happen or this could happen. And, those kind of statements just sort of suck the air right out of the room, and nobody wants to try anything new. So we're moving now with this OKR format to this MVP mindset, where we're saying, hey, you know what? We're not sure, how this is going to work, but our objective is to see more, you know, customers come through our door and spend more time in our building. All right, here's our measures of success. What are the actions we need to take to make sure that that happens? And after 90 days, if we don't see ourselves making progress, then we need to sit back and self-correct. Do we have the right key results? Are we taking the right actions? Did our team come together good? A lot of dynamics go on with these 90-day working cycles. You get people from working out of their comfort zone, sort of the under promise, over deliver type of mindset, to this growth mindset. Hey, there's so much opportunity out there. Let's experiment. If we fail, we're going to learn from it, but we're going to be smarter in the next 90 days that we work at. Also, in this sort of command and control strategic planning mode, business as usual activities dominate goals. I've worked with teams that are using OKRs, and you train them, you get them to understand how to write good OKRs. They understand, the strategic importance of the OKRs. You set them off, they go do their own sort of planning session. They come back and they have a list of 70 OKRs, and you just start looking at them and you realize that 66 of them are just business as usual. It's the things that the organization actually hires the people to do, and people are writing OKRs for what's basically in their job description. And then the last thing is you're moving from this activity base, just people doing activities to make them look like they're busy, to really focus on, hey, what's the value that we can deliver to our customer? What's the value that we can create with our customer? It's going to help our customer get better. And that's that outcome focused organization. So doing this deployment right, you see this shift in the culture and mindset of the people and how people work and behave uh, to the column that you see on the right. This final slide just gives you an idea of sort of a timeline as to how this would look from the 40,000-foot view. Um, so, and over on the left, if you look at this is sort of the ecosystem. So you have leaders practicing this agile leadership. And then you have these self-managed teams that are working on OKRs. And then you're getting results. And as each of these wind spills, it influences the other. So as you get better results, the leaders say, hey, my coaching is helping us get better results. And that helps the wheel spin on self-managed teams. And people say, hey, you know what? I now have more freedom to make decisions and decide what it is I want to do and experiment more. And then that's pushing towards more results. So this ecosystem begins to develop where the results help feed, the behaviors that you want to see within the organization. Um, and as this is moving, you see this timeline where, starting with the setup of your OKR office, training your influencers in the organization, deploying, with pilot teams, and then scaling this up to areas of high importance. And then at one point, you're actually scaling it up to the enterprise level because you have a lot of success stories. You have a lot of people by this point that, have failed, have got themselves back up, been resilient, and, went after that same objective again, but maybe from a different standpoint. Then at one point, sometime in the future, you're sustaining it. You're, self-correcting. If you're in this transformation office, you're always looking at your standards. You're always looking at, hey, what it is that our leaders are doing. How can we get better at this? And making these adjustments to the standards that you have within that transformation office. So again, this OKR framework impacts the mindsets and behaviors of everybody in the organization, the ways of working, leadership, and it gets into that performance management space as well. So this is just a quick little table and I put this in here sort of last minute because I felt, people would want to get some, clear ideas of what are some of the takeaways you should have. So if you're in this large scale deployment space, if you're working with a company that wants to do this, these would be some of the things that I would highly recommend that you start with. One is, creating this OKR office. We talked about this, creating an OKR playbook. So these are what would be the standards, it defines what the organization will do, defines, the different elements of your transformational journey. You're going to need coaches and consultants. You're going to need people that are competent, people that are really good at influencing others to, try these processes. These people also need to be technically sound when it comes to transformation, OKRs. You're going to have people in the organization, senior leaders, be a part of this initial rollout. They're going to have to be champions. They're going to have maybe even be part of this transformation office or this OKR office. This is quite key because they can be quite important in influencing other key senior leaders in the organization. And of course, you want to have some way to track, how well we're doing with the deployment. So it's sort of an OKRs for the deployment type of dashboard. The last thing I want to talk about are just the traps. And for some reason, this always is an interesting point for me. So, and what I want to point out is, these are some of the things that can derail any transformation. So it could be a small organization, but it's a large organization. It applies just as well. As I was thinking about this, I wanted to say that it's not necessarily a single point. One of these may not be the one that derails you, but if you have two or more going on in a large organization, then you're definitely probably going to see sort of a OKR deployment or a transformation initiative, get slowed down or possibly come to a stop. The first one is that, the transformation initiative, the OKR system, isn't communicated as being essential to the organization. As soon as somebody says, oh, well, just, use whatever you think's important or whatever's fit for purpose. No, at that point, you're giving people a way out of not using OKRs in their strategic planning or as a way to define the work that needs to get done. Um, Along with that, if you don't position your transformation initiative or the OKR framework as a mechanism to grow the company, explain to people, hey, why we're doing this is that, we may be successful now, but we could be even more successful. We can, look at things from a different angle, sort of, let's look at this from, the customer point of view. Let's empathize with the customer. Let's not just sort of focus on what, our internal financial KPIs are telling us. Let's, reach out and see where these opportunities that maybe we haven't looked at before and how we can grow sales or grow our company um, from a different point of view. The other thing, and this is most likely true with all large multinational organizations, is that there's multiple transformations ongoing at the same time. So when I was with Roche, we had transformations going on in the commercial area. You had finance doing their own transformation. You had information officer doing his own transformation. You had HR doing their own transformation, and they were all independent. All these sort of C room fellas were, launching their transformation because they were told, hey, this is the right thing to do. And, operations was doing sort of a lean transformation, and finance was doing more of a, headcount reduction, and, the chief information officer was doing more of a value stream transformation. I mean, it's just unbelievable how many of these transformations were ongoing, and it just creates so much confusion, and it really sort of took away from the momentum of some of the transformations that were going on. Senior leader indifference. If you get these senior leaders that don't stop you, that don't, put up barriers for implementation, but then again, they don't provide any positive support. Now, this is something else that would just sort of derail you. Now, these are the, hey, business as usual, comfort zone type of players. I don't want to do anything that, everything seems to be working now, so why do I need to change type of senior leaders. People that talk about the low hanging fruit. Oh, yeah, let's do OKRs and go after the low hanging fruit. Yeah, normally, low hanging fruit are solutions that people already know. There's nothing new there that they're trying to explore. Um, and there's such a short-lived sort of journey. It's definitely more of like a, I don't know, publicity stunt maybe to say that, oh, we used OKRs to, go after this problem that we knew the solution for the last 2 years. We just didn't put any money into it. Those are kind of things that sort of make you think, okay, you're not really taking it seriously. Um, Lacking capabilities within the OKR office. So in these large organizations, when we talk about, creating coaches that are going to support this transformational initiative, a lot of times you get sort of generalists coming in, especially from like organizational development or HR, maybe a couple from operations, people that just are good facilitators or have coaching capabilities, but they lack sort of the technical expertise in, you know, helping teams decide, hey, what is a good objective? What are good key results? Standing up and telling the team, hey, you probably need to rework this objective because it lacks sort of a customer centric focus or it's too wordy. So having this lack of capabilities in that OKR office can also be a way that sort of derails your transformation journey. Flavor of the month, if every 2 years, the company is doing some kind of transformation initiative, um, people are not going to take, what you're currently doing seriously. So whether it's, agile, business agility, or OKRs, or any kind of leadership, if they've seen, transformation initiative after transformational initiative, it's just going to minimize the importance of what you're trying to do now. Um, Passive resistance by leaders. This one is actually quite, um, can be quite difficult as a change agent, as a coach, to work with. And what I mean by passive resistance by leaders is that this is the kind of leader that says, yeah, let's do OKRs for our annual planning. And you said, great. And, as a coach, you work with a transformation lead and you create a game plan, a design and workshop to, bring all the senior leaders together and have them work on creating strategic and sort of tactical OKRs for the organization. And then this leader comes out one day and says, oh, well, we need to put that workshop on hold because something else came up that's more important. Or, we can't have the workshop next week because, and this is in a manufacturing saying, oh, we got a, machine that's down and we need to make sure that we can get the machine up and running, and want all the senior leaders to be sort of, hands on deck to make sure that, the machine gets up and running. So this kind of, politic playing by these passive resistant leaders can be interpreted as, leaders just trying to, derail this sort of transformational journey. And the last one I have here, and there's probably a few more that aren't on this list, is, the transformation initiative is bolted on to sort of an existing function. So, instead of having a separate, transformation office or OKR office, what happens is, hey, we'll put this, transformation office, we'll bolt it on to, say, the merger and acquisition function, or we'll bolt it on to the manufacturing operations, department. And it sort of just becomes a project management office for, whoever that function is that they're sort of bolted onto. So they're not independent. They don't have their own sort of, license or contract to say, hey, we're here, we have work we have to do, and, our work requires everybody to support our transformation effort. So these are definitely some traps that, if you have a sense or you feel that these are occurring, that, you need to take some action to, try to minimize their impact, raise the flag, speak up, say, hey, you know what, we didn't tell people that, this transformation initiative we're on is here to help them, do their work better, or help the organization succeed in the future, or change our way of working. So uh, it's definitely areas you want to be sensitive to as you go through this transformational journey that you're on. So that sort of brings me to the end. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. Oops, it looks like I went over. So I told Dirk I could talk a lot, so
Yeah.
I apologize about that. So Dirk, I'll pass it back over to you and stop sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Christian, for these great insights. I think it's always good to get these practical insights from OKR implementation in a large organization. Thanks for sharing. I think we have a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe Christian,
Sure.
also you can look there. But please feel free to also to ask directly here in this webinar if you have any questions. We still have a couple
Okay.
of minutes left. Yeah.
So I see one. I'm just going down from the top to the bottom. One is, so what do you think about combining Hoshin Cannery and OKR for large scale corporations? Hoshin Cannery, I worked with it in a lot of lean implementations. Um, I think it's, it's applicable. I would probably go with one or the other, to be honest with you. I wouldn't combine the two. I just think you'll just draw too much confusion with within the organization by trying to bring them together. A lot of times when I see the X matrix or the Hoshin Canry approach, they're using more of a KPI type of goal setting process than a OKR approach. So I really think that the OKR approach with key results drive more value for the organization than say the Hoshin Canry. Actually, I'm a big fan of the strategy A3s over the Hoshin Canry. I think if you research, type in, look, research strategic A3s, um, and
Uh,
those would work well with OKRs.
Can you
Yeah.
you write it down? Can you write that down? It would be really great. Thank you so much. If anybody can write that down.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the whole question.
So sorry to interrupt. I just would like to have it on written because I don't understand. I didn't understand. Can you please write it down on the chat?
Write down the strategic A3. Yeah,
Exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
Maybe we,
Yeah, yeah. So the strategic A3 and OKRs will work really well together. But you can't water down, I think, the OKR. You still so the idea of Hoshin Canry and even the strategic A3 is that you use a waterfall type of project planning in order to achieve, most likely it's a KPI. And so what you end up doing is you have people saying, well, I'm going to plan to, do the work, and then I'm going to meet with teams, and these become sort of the actions. And the real value with the OKR is that, you set this objective, which everybody knows is sort of qualitative, how are we going to win the hearts and minds of our employees, get them more motivated coming to work every morning with this clear statement as to what we're trying to do this year. And then you're measuring, sort of independent key results, measures of success. But collectively, these key results help you achieve that objective. So it's not a waterfall. Usually in Hoshin Cannery, your key results would be sort of a waterfall method. We're going to do number 1 first, number 2, number 3, number 4. And after I finish number 4 key result, then, you may or may not have achieved the objective or the value that you're trying to achieve. So I would just, strategic A3 I thought was quite helpful. Let me see what's the next question. I got a couple here. Ocean Cannery, left to this reacting, set your calendar. Roche is very established, an old organization. I'm sure similar must have been rolled out earlier. What management framework were you okay? What were them? So yeah, I think that's a good question. I've lately been doing a lot of reading on leadership, a lot of reading on, what it is that, can make people, teams more motivated. How can we create more of a better work environment for people? What can leaders do? How can work change? And even in, I just saw a conversation today, video clip on LinkedIn between, one of the managing directors in Roche and, his counterpart in operations, who would be another, I guess, VP or managing director for operation. And, the VP for operations said, yeah, my strategy for leadership is give everybody clear goals. But, they just run past that. They never talk about what their process is for goal setting. And Roche would be the same way. It was all financially driven. Basically, before OKRs were brought onto the scene, everything was driven by financial numbers. Where do we want to be financially? And this is, in a sales organization, it's, hey, where do we want to be in sales? How much sales do we have to have? And we have new products coming. What are the sales we want to get here? The work, the content, some of the products don't change, but your approach to how you define what you're trying to do and your measures of success change. So with Roche, I'd be honest with you, OKRs, yeah, they've been around since the 70s or 80s, but people don't practice them. People, again, sort of intuitively think, hey, I know what OKRs are, and we already do goal setting. And they think that they'll call that an OKR. So there's quite sort of this knowledge gap in between, at least in my opinion, what I saw between what they were currently doing with goal setting, which was just sort of a business planning, budgeting process, versus what OKRs actually bring to the organization. So this is a very large organization, felt that OK is not meant for them. Moments of age. So I'm looking at the question from Manish, who says, was at any point in time where you felt that OK was not meant for them? I don't think that people felt that OKRs were not meant for them. I can share with you one learning that we had from the deployment. So when we started out, we were under the impression, we had to have strategic OKRs, which looked out 3 to 5 years. And then from there, we had to define sort of an annual OKR. And of course, there's this alignment linkage between your strategic and your annual. And it can be implicit or explicit. And again, we also got into problems with the number of OKRs. How many strategic OKRs do you need? How many sort of annual OKRs do you need? And then, we talked about the 90-day OKRs. And when we first rolled it out, we thought we had to recraft all the, we did strategic OKRs. There was a separate objective key result. When we did the annual OKRs, separate objective and key, and then 90-day OKRs, we had to write more objectives and more key results. And it was just so cumbersome that people are like, why are we doing all this extra work? And it took the coaches, myself and other, people that were leading this transformation change to look at it and say, hold on, we're missing something here. And we finally, realized that, hey, the 90-day, you don't necessarily change the objective from the annual to the 90-day. That sort of stays the same. But what you're changing is what you're working on, and that's your key results. You're working towards those key results in the 90 days. So if you finish a key result, if you achieve what you said in that key result in 90 days, then you go back up to that annual OKR and you say, okay, what's the next most important key result I want to achieve this year? And that's what you start working on that second 90 days. So there was never a point in time where people said, oh, this is not for us. I don't think there's too many organizations that would say goal setting or strategic planning is not really for us. But there were times where people just felt, hey, we're doing a lot of more work than what we feel like we should be doing. How can we get better at understanding what OKRs are to help us deliver these results? It's an interesting question, though. It makes you think about it some. Yeah, I'm looking at Ahmad's question. Can transformation be one person? Yeah, it can be. So I myself was the transformation office for APAC in the diagnostics division. So you can definitely have a one-person show. So there's some interesting stories being a self-managed team of one. So Roche is a pharma company. How can it try MVP in market or your product? Yeah, so that's so you're not necessarily, I think this is a good question because pharma is quite complex and quite regulated. And it's you're not necessarily doing an MVP on the product, on the drug itself. But what you're doing is once your drug's been developed, what you try to do is you try to increase your market access, try to increase the number of people that can have access to that drug. And this is where your MVPs come in. This is where you say, hey, what's our approach that we can take with hospitals and doctors and clinics in order to get them to, look at our drug and prescribe it? How can we influence government regulators to get our product on a reimbursement list for the country? And what's our approach here? What's our plan, our strategy in order to get this done? How can we sort of position ourselves, so that regulators will talk to us before they start making changes in drug application procedures? So these are more the MVPs that sort of, this experimentation that went on in Roche. It wasn't, I think in the R&D area, maybe, of course, laboratory area, they're doing MVPs all the time, right? They're testing drugs and saying, hey, this combination of drugs ended up killing all the, animals that we had in the lab. So that definitely need to go back and reformulate. So that goes on, but once that drug hits the commercial stage, once it's been approved for human use and it's got a market authorization, your MVPs are now more towards how do we increase our market access? How do we get more influence over regulators? If you go into operations, you do MVPs all the time. For people who know lean, you're doing changeovers, with SMED events, and hey, let's try this approach and let's see if we get better at it. If this approach doesn't work, then let's try a different approach to how we do the changeover. So all these functions have sort of different ways of working and different perspectives, and your MVP is applied in different ways, I think, in each of these settings. So 90 days commitment to OKRs, outcomes, and desired impact, flexibility and key results to get these. Also, are you suggesting that individual performance bonus and be incorporated in team performance outcomes? Yeah, so that's sort of the idea that I was pushing towards. That if you're going to have this performance management approach, then individual performance you should have, everything should be on a team basis. I always used to coach people, say, how can you have one person on a team that's doing outstanding work and the rest of the team is sort of doing mediocre or not that good of work? So shouldn't there be sort of a level playing field here? And it can happen, maybe your team is completely, different roles and different focus areas. But, if you have a sales team or a marketing team, or you have a assembly team, isn't it just all these people working together as a team, really the measure of success? So with Roche, they actually, in the commercial space, they actually did away with performance management. So there was a number of years I didn't have to write no objectives for myself. I would have ongoing conversations with my boss. I'd keep them updated on, here's work I'm doing, here's feedback I'm getting from people on, how I'm doing. And all that went into, and we still did annual performance evaluations, but the continuous ongoing conversations and dialogue throughout the year took the place of a personal objective of, here are the 4 or 5 things I'm going to do through the year to, to earn my merit or my bonus. What else? Do you recommend using software for OKR management? Please share your experience. So I know a couple of teams that have used software for OKRs. I would say that there's a trap here that you have to watch out for. because usually when you start using the software, there's one person that's sort of the administrator for that program. And slowly this person turns into like a PMO. And then this person spends their time, sending emails out to team leaders saying, hey, update your OKRs. And so you really sort of, I think it can be used. I saw like John Doerr has a great web-based OKR, system that he uses. You go online and you see what he's working on, and he's got his confidence levels and everything. I think it would work. I don't know if I would start off with the software first. I would make sure that you had people understanding how OKRs work and how sort of having these weekly and maybe monthly meetings, and people, using an Excel sheet just to track where they're at, writing down their objectives. I think, to me, getting that behavior established first and then moving on to maybe software would work. But yeah, when I've seen it rolled out in the initial phases, generally it turns into just sort of big project management software, and and people just continuously add objectives to that software. So it can be somewhat tricky.
Yeah, maybe I can add here a little
Thanks
bit.
for your great ideas.
Christian, maybe I can add a little bit to the software.
Okay, go ahead, Dirk. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's sufficient to start with an Excel sheet if you're in a small group. But if you bring in alignment and engagement, then I think it's also advisable to get a kind of more sophisticated platform in form of a software even. So a lot of software there. For example, we are using our own system, OKR.io. So please feel free to go on the website. It's a software which is suitable for small businesses, but also to large organizations. Or there's a software called flowyteam.com. Please feel free. So part of this software is free. But what Christian said, you can start with an internal platform, or you can start with an Excel sheet first. Yeah.
I think that's all the questions, Dirk.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
So,
We overshot a little bit,
yeah,
but thanks for your time, Christian. I really appreciate that.
No worries.
Thanks everyone for your time to took part in this webinar. We will publish more events also for next year. Please join our OKRI Heartbeat community. I published it, so I shared it in the chat group here. And I'm looking forward to see you all in the upcoming event. Thank you very much, and have a lovely rest of the week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bye-bye.